Good evening, members. I'd like to welcome all councillors, officers and members of the public to the meeting of the council. Please, as a reminder, please switch your phones, mobile phones, to either silent or off, please. There are members of the public and press attending this meeting virtually. Can I please ask those attending virtually to switch off your microphones to avoid any disruption during the meeting. The meeting is being recorded and will be available in due course on the council's YouTube channel. Reminders for councillors: to ensure that those attending virtually and in person can hear the proceedings, and for the recording to capture the entire meeting, please ensure that you project your voice and speak clearly. Please remember it's a formal meeting and therefore do not refer to each other by first names. When addressing council, please stand if you are able to do so. There is no fire alarm planned. Therefore, upon hearing a constant two-tone alarm, please leave the building via your nearest marked fire exit and make your way down the stairs to the nearest assembly point, which is Fort Stay Car Park. Lifts are not to be used. Please do not take time to pick up personal belongings and leave the building promptly. Thank you. Item 1, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chair, received apologies from councillors Tops, Whitehead, Ricky Knight, Turton and Caroline Lever, Chair.
Item 2, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of November 2023, pages 11 to 22. Do I have a mover? Thank you. Seconder? Thank you. All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 3, Chair's announcement. I've only got one, and that's obviously I've got the Valentine's Ball, which is the 10th of February. It'd be lovely to see as many councillors there as possible. It's not just to councillors, you can bring friends, families, etc. It's for 2 worthwhile charities: North Devon Hospice, which is now the Royal Devon Hospital Charities, but the money will raise will go to the Burn Centre at the North Devon Hospital. And so any queries or anything more information that you want to know, please speak to Glyn in Member Services. Thank you. Item 4, business brought forward or with the consent of the Chair. There is none. Item 5, replies to any questions submitted by the public and or to receive petitions under Part 4, Council Procedure Rules, paragraph 89 of the Constitution, none received. Item 6, to consider motions of which notice has been submitted by members in accordance with Part 4 Council Procedure Rules, paragraph 11 of the Constitution. Item A, to consider the following motion from Councillor Maskell. Councillor Maskell. Thank you.
Okay, so I put forward this motion following some cuts to bus services to Georgia last autumn. A number of my residents were facing waits of over an hour at Barnstaple bus station for up to two to 3 weeks before we were able to get Devon County Council to reinstate the 1540 bus to Georgia. Some of those residents were elderly and needed to be able to sit down, have a drink, and most importantly, to use the toilet, none of which they were able to do. Barnstaple Bus Station is the transport hub of North Devon. It is the first impression of Barnstaple for visitors arriving on the National Express services, and for quite a while it's not been a good impression. So the bus shelters and signs have just been replaced by Devon County Council, thanks to some additional funding secured by the Cabinet Member for Transport and our former District Councillor Andrea Davids. And she shares my delight at the announcement that this council is committing to reopening the station and station building, and most importantly the toilets, by Easter. This will give our most vulnerable residents the confidence to travel into Barnstaple by bus from the more rural areas, safe in the knowledge that they won't be caught short. I'm therefore happy to withdraw my motion and thank the council for acting upon it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, item. To consider the following notice of motion from Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And for transparency purposes, I'm just going to say that I'm an employee of the Think Well Foundation, which is a charity that works with refugees. I'm bringing this motion to you for the following reasons. United Nations estimated in 2020 that there are 281 million migrants across the globe. 35 million of these are refugees, and 110 million of these are forcibly displaced, forced from their homes but not yet recognised as refugees. To put this another way, 1 in 74 of the world's population have been forced to flee their homes. Sadly, ongoing theatres of conflict, persecution, human rights abuses, and the effects of climate change are only going to increase these numbers. We can all agree, I think, that an international solution to creating safe, orderly and regular migration is desperately needed, but it is a distant hope at the moment. So we must focus on what we can do here in North Devon, and we have, as communities and a local authority, been giving welcomes for years to migrants and refugees. This has been going on quietly in our towns and villages and has enriched our communities, and North Devon Council has been integral to it. Migration also poses many challenges to a local authority, and at this point in time, with budgets stretched tighter than ever and a chronic shortage of housing, councils, despite wanting to give basic support to migrants and refugees, lack the funds from central government to do this properly. At the same time, migrants are demonised in parts of the media as being the source of many of the country's problems. Joining the City of Sanctuary network as a local authority would help. It will encourage best practice and resource sharing among councils, and also give opportunities to lobby the government as one voice. The City of Sanctuary movement encourages organisations to celebrate the positive stories of migration, which are happening everywhere, but which are so often being drowned out. I would like to see North Devon Council show its compassion and care for sanctuary seekers and strengthen its resilience in this work by joining this network. And for that reason, I recommend the motion to you all.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Yeah, and also for clarity, I would just like to point out that I am a sponsor on the Homes for Ukraine scheme, so have an interest in the welfare of refugees, especially within North Devon. I would like to point out that we, as an authority, are the leader in the country on the way we deal with refugees. Sarah Bentley, whose praises I cannot sing highly enough, has been going out to other councils to show them how to do it properly. We have less falling out between hosts and families coming from Ukraine than anywhere else in the country, because we have a really good support network in North Devon. And whilst it sounds like the next step should be to join something like City of Sanctuary, at this moment in time, we do not know what the resource implications of this is likely to be, and whether we will be doing anything better than we are already doing by being part of the group, or whether it will curtail the good work that we're doing, because we'll be expected to do it their way and not put in our own extremely innovative ideas. I would therefore like to propose an amendment that this goes to Strategy and Resources Committee to be looked at further.
You need a second. Chair, could I second the motion that was proposed by Councillor Ward?
Thank you. Okay, we have a moving and seconder on that. I've also got an amendment. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Thank you. Right, we'll do the amendment first. So, all in favour of the amendment, please.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Chair. 7. Chair.
Thank you. And so that's carried.
So that becomes the substantive motion, which is to pass the motion through to Strategy and Resources Committee. So you need a second vote on that, Chair.
Yeah, can I have a second on that, please?
You
Pass it. Are you proposing to pass it through to SNR?
You've got that.
Ready for you.
Okay, yeah.
So, no, sorry, Councillor Walker. Thank you very much for seconder. All in favour of passing it to SNR? Carried. Thank you very much. Item 7, declarations of interest. I'm taking it that all of you have read that, and if you have any interest, you should have already contacted Corporate and Community Service, but I'm handing over to Bev on this now.
Just to confirm, I've received none, Chair.
Thank you. Item 8, Chair's replies to any questions to council by members submitted under Part 4 of Council Procedure Rules, paragraph 10 of the Constitution. None received. Item 9 to agree the agenda between Part A and Part B. Can I have a mover, please? Seconder? All in favour? Thank you. Right, in Part A still. Report of the leader, item 10, pages 23 to 24. Councillor Roux.
Thank you very much, Chair. Members, the report's in front of you, as it is. The main highlight really is the local government settlement, finance settlement, which has been put out to us all. The local government finance settlement for 24-25 was announced just before Christmas. We have replied with a consultation response, which will, or has been, to sending the copy to all members as well.
Not to all members yet, Chair.
Yeah.
Part of the budget papers next month.
So the implications of that is that we're vastly, as a rural council, receive a lot less than a lot of the other councils. And I wrote to the FP about this and received a response. But I will, we're working through the budgets at the moment, and obviously full members of council will be part of that budgeting process as usual in February. And the other items in the report you can read for yourself. Nice that the Tarka Leisure Centre received the national award, which was nice to hear. And we're having the launch of the community lottery that members voted for us to go ahead and do next week. And that will be really good. In fact, I think we've oversubscribed for places. So a lot of the community have reacted in a positive way to this. So it's really good because we have more seats in places for people to turn up and attend the event. So it's really good that the community's got behind this and are looking so passionately to attend. So members, that's my first New Year briefing for you. But the main highlight is the finance settlement thing, which I'm sure you will all be appraised of in February.
Thank you. Item 11. Questions by members. Questions to the leader or the chair of the committee submitted under Part 4. Council Procedure Rules, paragraph 10.4 of the Constitution. None received. Item 12, Statement of Accounts 2022-23. John's report.
Chair, the leader of the independent group said, well, the secretary deputy of the independent group said that we weren't given the chance to ask questions.
I'm sorry, I had to look around twice to see if anyone's hands was
We
up.
haven't got any questions.
And I think I'm officially married to secretary, not the.
Oh, okay. Then got to those side, Chair.
I'm happy with that.
Carry on. Yes, I am.
Thank you. Good evening, members. Item 12A on your agenda papers this evening are your statement of accounts for 22-23 financial year. So this is everything up to and including the 31st of March 2023. So we'll be talking about new year figures. Generally, this is all about the last financial year ended 31st of March. So the draft statement of accounts that are in front of you this evening was signed by myself as Chief Financial Officer on the 8th of June 2023. Target date for the published audited accounts is the 30th of September annually. Last year, that target date was extended to November 22. This year, the target date wasn't extended. However, due to national resource pressures, a lot of councils haven't had their accounts signed off by the external auditors. A number of them haven't had their accounts signed off for the previous year, 21-22, and some even go back as far as 19-20. But I'm pleased that you've got a set in front of you this evening for the year ended 22-23 that have been audited, and following tonight's approval by yourselves, if you're minded to approve them, they will hopefully be signed off by the auditor by Monday. The external audit of the accounts by Grant Thornton has taken place through October to December, and that was concluded at the beginning of last week when the Governance Committee received the audit findings report. The auditors reported what we call an unqualified opinion on the financial statements, which is what you're looking for. An unqualified opinion is a clean audit, and I'm pleased to report that the Council have received an unqualified opinion on those statements. There were 7 recommendations made following those key findings, and they've been accepted by management, and the responses have been built into the action plan with the external auditors. And therefore the accounts are here in front of you this evening for sign-off. Just taking you to the accounts, you'll see there's quite a significant number of pages. There are about 102 pages. I'm not going to take you through all of them, but I will just point you to some of the key points within the statements. So the first area I'd like to take you to, and I'll refer to the agenda pages at the bottom of your papers, is starting on page 28, and this is the first 10 pages of the accounts, which are your narrative reports. And if you're going to read the accounts, really, this is the first part of the accounts and probably the most important statement, because that sort of summarises the financial statements for you. And it also sets out the challenges we face as an authority and how we aim to meet those challenges through the medium-term financial plan. It also reviews the financial year 22-23, and it also sets out the challenge that was facing not only us, but the whole country in terms of the cost of living pressures and also the UK's rising inflation rate through 22-23. It started in 21-22 at 2.9% and rose through April 2022 11.1%, and that double-digit inflation continued into the 22-23 statements and added significant pressure to the revenue budget during the year. A number of those inflationary pressures have been built into the financial plans, but with inflation still high, we were continuing to capture those through the early part of this new financial year, and they will be fed through to you in your quarterly performance reports that you receive at Strategy and Resources and through to full council. However, the narrative report doesn't just look at the last year, but is forward-looking and does include a section on the medium-term financial plan that takes you up to 2029. Starting on page 31 is a review of the financial year ending 31st of March 23, and that sets out that the Q3 position we were reporting in December 22, a small net surplus of 19,000 against the net revenue budget. We saw some favourable variances in the last quarter since that reported position in December 22, most notably additional income from planning fees, a reduction in the temporary accommodation spend in the latter stages of 22-23, over and above the additional cost pressures that were forecast. We also saw improved interest receivable on our investments. In high interest rates, obviously, will impact us in terms of our borrowing costs, but on the flip side, if we are investing money, we then get a favourable return in terms of some of those treasury investments. We also saw additional growth on our business rates income and some additional government grant income that came in the last quarter. So members, it was pleasing to report that the final outturn position against the net budget surplus was 693,000, and that's set out in a table on pages 32 and 33 that just summarises those main variances for you. The movement from the Q3 position, therefore, is 674,000, and that can be mainly attributed to a couple of adverse variances in terms of benefit subsidy and the amount that we can reclaim on our housing benefit payments that are paid out, especially those that we house through temporary accommodation. We saw an increased cost on that front. We saw a reduction in our pannier market income. Obviously, the pannier market had closed and we did re-house some of our in Green Lanes, but we did see a reduction in our pannier market income due to the project work that was taking place within the pannier market. We also made a cost award provision in relation to the Yelland appeal. That was 151,000. Because that provision was made, that had to go into the 22-23 financial statements and was set in the 22-23 accounts. We then saw some favourable variances, as I set out, with temporary accommodation saving us 99,000, some additional planning fees of 110,000, an increased contribution from the crematorium of 41,000, business rates and pooling income from the Devon-wide business rates pool of 395,000, interest receivable 136,000, and additional government grants of 180,000. For the 22-23 year end, we recommended to members through the outturn report to place those monies into reserves, 120,000 into the office technology reserve to fund capital business cases coming forwards for our ICT infrastructure, 214,000 into the repairs fund to fund capital business cases coming forwards for funding, an additional 279,000 into the budget management reserve to mitigate against those increased inflationary pressures going into this financial year 23-24, and £80,000 into an insurance reserve to mitigate against higher insurance costs through 23-24 from our premium renewals. Within the narrative report, I also talk about Green Lane Shopping Centre and set out the context for us having acquired the shopping centre in November 2021. The financial modelling behind that business case demonstrated that the revenue income that we would receive from the centre would both repay the loan costs and asset management costs and would return a contribution to the council that was favourable, that could be used towards mitigating future risks on our income volatility, investing back into the centre, and also overarching regeneration projects through the council budget. I'm pleased to report the 22-23 trading position of Green Lanes, once those costs have been taken out, produced a net return of 291,000 to the revenue budget. That included us having accounted for the borrowing cost as well. That's a positive return for the council and is in line with our original forecasting that was set out in the business case presented to members. The reserves for the council at 22-23 are set out within the narrative statement and set out that our general fund reserve is at 1.238 million and our earmark reserves of 11.1 million, and a breakdown of those earmark reserves are in your accounts on pages 62 and 63 in note 11. That reserve includes £900,000 in the collection fund reserve that is there to mitigate timing differences of business rate reliefs that are awarded in 22-23 year, and then they come out and get phased over the 23-24 and 24-25 year from an accounting perspective. The members, those balances in your reserves at the end of 22-23 left the council in a much stronger position to deal with the risks and challenges that it faces this year, 23-24 year. And it's also positive for the council to be able to put those balances back into reserves at year end, and especially after such a challenging financial year following the pandemic and those inflationary pressures experienced in 22-23. The medium-term financial forecasts that were approved by this council last February as part of the budget, and something that you'll approve at your next meeting, are set out on pages 29 and 30. They're refreshed annually and are also built into the service planning for 23-24. Those balances that are set out the budgeted position for 23-24 as being balanced, a budget gap of around £500,000 for 24-25, increasing significantly in 25-26 due to the uncertainty around when the government's fair funding review is coming forwards, but a refreshed position on that medium-term financial forecast will be presented to you at your next meeting, but they're included in the statement of accounts for that position that was seen at the end of 22-23. You also have key performance indicators set out on pages 39 to 43. And then members, you're into the main statements of the accounts, which are on pages 45 to 51, starting with your comprehensive income and expenditure statements. That includes a number of non-cash accounting entries that are subsequently reversed out, so they don't impact the bottom line of the council taxpayer. And they're reversed out through a statement called the movement and reserve statement that is shown on pages 47 and 46. That shows the £59.5 million shown at the bottom of the comprehensive income and expenditure statements, But the end result in terms of the cash position was a £28,000 change in the general fund balance at the end of the financial year, increasing to 1.238 million. The movement in reserve statement is then shown on page 47 and shows your usable reserves, which are your general fund balance and your earmark reserves and some capital grants of £16 million. That's down from 18 million the previous year, but that's due to movements within the collection fund reserve that I touched on earlier. And then you have unusable reserves of £90 million, and a breakdown of those is shown on pages 95 to 98, and they're purely for accounting purposes, dealing with the pension fund liability and dealing with how we fund the capital programme. The total net worth in your balance sheet, which is shown on page 48, shows the net worth of the authority at £106 million. Those net assets of £106 million is a £59 million increase in the 21-22 year, which you might think is a considerable increase, and all of a sudden where those assets come from. It's due to a reduction in our liability on the pension fund, and that's due to a number of assumptions that I'll come on to shortly as to how the pension fund liability is recalculated every 3 years. You've got long-term assets on your balance sheet on page 48 of £8 million. That's an increase of £8 million from the year before, so they're sat at 128.8 million. There's a breakdown of those on note 15 on page 87 and 88. The main reasons for that £8 million increase are some revaluation increases. So every year we have to revalue our assets. Those revaluations get built into the asset values on the balance sheets. The previous year we had an asset under construction, which was the leisure centre that was referred to earlier. That asset under construction then became obviously a real asset then during 22-23, and that's built into the balance sheet. And also you had capital spend on temporary accommodation of 350,000 during the year, and increased spend on green lanes. That's the additional amounts that then went into your long-term assets in the year. You had an increase in your net current assets of £2 million, a decrease in our cash and cash balances. That's due to some of the government funding that we'd had for business grants from the earlier years that was then coming out during the 22-23 year. A £4 million increase in debtors, and then we saw an £18 million reduction in creditors, i.e. the amount of money that was going out of the authority. And again, that's due to monies that was due back to central government due to the repayment of business grant balances at the end of that period. The above of those three negate each other and come to a £2 million net increase. The balance sheet also shows your long-term borrowing. That's the same level that we had at the end of March 2023. So even though we are committed to borrowing more for the capital programme, we haven't actually taken on any more external borrowing at that current point of March 23, and that balance still remains at £3 million. We then come on to the pension fund liability, and you'll see that that net liability is decreased by £50 million. The pension fund liability is revalued every 3 years, and since the previous valuation 3 years previous to that, there's been a change in a number of the financial assumptions. The discount rate used for calculating the pension fund liability has increased from 2.6% to 4.8%. That then decreases the liability due to that longer term projection of pension fund liabilities. The pension increase assumption in terms of how much pension is due to be paid out has decreased from 3.2% to 2.95%. And assumptions on salary increases also have decreased from 4% down to 3.95%. So all of those assumption changes change the forecast of how the pension fund liability is calculated, and that's why the pension fund liability has come down quite significantly, which is positive in terms of your balance sheet balances. The pensions deficit are shown in more detail within notes in the accounts, later in the accounts towards the back. But those pension deficits that are shown in your balance sheet are made good by increased contributions over the remaining working life of all employees. So it's taking that longer term view in terms of when those pensions will be. Your next main statement is your cash flow statement on page 49, and that just shows how the council generates and uses its cash and cash equivalents. And then your final two main statements are the collection fund on pages 50 and 51. And because this council is a billing authority, we raise all of the bills for council tax and business rates, but all of that money doesn't just come to us. So this statement just shows how much we raise in total, how much is collected, and how much is then paid out to those major preceptors and what the balances are at the end of the year. Your accounting policies are shown on pages 52 to 71. These haven't changed materially from the 2021-22 year, and these are the rules and concepts in preparing the accounts. And then your notes to the accounts start on page 72 right the way through to page 122, and these are further disclosure notes that break down those figures that I referred to in the main statement earlier. Finally, you've got the draft auditor's report that's shown on pages 123 to 128. The audit's been concluded currently, and as I said, it came to Governance Committee last Tuesday. And I'll pass it over to the Chair of Governance shortly, just to give an update in terms of what was received by Governance Committee last week. The opinion that's in the financial statements in that report sets out that the financial statements give a true and fair view of the financial position of the authority and an unqualified opinion. So that is what you're looking for in terms of a set of accounts that come to your council. And Chair, I'll then refer to the recommendations that are in your reports, which are shown on pages 25, that the statement of accounts be approved and that the chairman of the council sign and date the accounts as required by the Accounts and Audit Regulations 2015. And prior to seeking a move the chair, I'd just like to pass over to the Chair of Governance Committee to report the outcomes from the Governance Committee held last Tuesday, 9th of January.
Thank you, Councillor Norman.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank you, Mr. Trigg, for a detailed summary of the accounts. And thank your team for all the support they've done. Just to update you, we met, Governance Committee met last January, and we had an equally lengthy report from our external auditors, which is very complimentary, I think, of the officers, the support of the officers. And it gave us really sort of a clean bill of health, really, I think, and advised the Governance Committee on the 13th of June recommended the statement of accounts be approved. That's my, do I need to approve?
We need to get a second.
Seconder. Can I have it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I take the vote, I've got some people questions. So read them in.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of observations and maybe move a slight amendment to the recommendation, because I think when you read this report, and I thank John and his team, like I say, that it's quite incredible what this council continues to achieve, isn't it? And there's a paragraph here that I sort of picked out of it, which is due to cuts in government grant and poor economic conditions, the council has reduced its revenue budget by around £4 million a year to £13 million for 22-23, with a reduction in workforce of around 130 posts since the start of 2010 spending review. Income streams have also been affected by the poor economic conditions. So, you know, it's quite unbelievable, really, that we still achieve everything that we achieve, and I think that's down to the fantastic workforce we've got and different administrations since 2010. You know, and Prue's quite right to raise earlier on, you know, that motion in regards to the bus station, and the reality is, you know, it's good that she recognises that you know, the officers are doing an incredible job despite the financial pressure to actually bring that vital amenity back into operation. But you know, you can't keep going on, can we? We can't keep reducing less. Even this year, which is a reasonable settlement, I guess, at 6.3, certainly a lot better. But still, we're going to have to find more savings because, you know,
What was it in 6.3?
Oh, that was county, sorry, yeah. 4.7. Yeah, so we're still fighting against inflation, especially with prices increases and things. So, you know, what really gets my goat is when we see government ministers, MPs standing there and talking about levelling up. You know, the reality is we've all been levelled down. You know, you know, if you do these figures, we're 40 million a year, you know, worse off in total than 2010. You factor in inflation over that time, and I don't know, I'm no mathematician, but I'm guessing we're 60 million. You know, John will start shaking his head one way or another. You know, we're probably 60 million down. And what if we had 6.5 billion for the Future High Streets Fund, and maybe a few other bits and bobs, you know, when we've gone begging, and government pitted us against Torish and our neighbours, so we're fighting with each other and employing staff to fight with each other over crumbs of replacement. So, you know, it does hackle me, and it winds me up every time I see a minister there saying it, an MP there, and we've seen our MP, haven't we, stood outside the bus station demanding it's reopened. You know, do they not realise that if you cut all our money, you know, we have to make difficult choices and, you know, and everything else. But despite all that, we're doing really well. So I just wonder, Chair, whether we ought to have a 2.2 to this report, which asks the council, writes to our MP to ask her to meet urgently with the Levelling Up Minister and request funding for projects like the library and like those projects in Ilfracombe. You know, we had a bid in that we were rejected on. You know, the reality is, you know, the real reality of North Devon's levelling up, if you like. You know, our reality is that we've lost millions and millions. And you know, we need help. We've got some of the most deprived poor wards. I mean, Ilfracombe, bless it, you know, it's got one of the most deprived wards in, and Sarah, you know, one of the most deprived wards in the area of Barnstable Central, similar. So, you know, I think really if we could take that 2.2.
I need a second.
We'll finish there, Chair, but might be inappropriate at this point. General, no, I don't see any reason why not in the statement of accounts that we can't raise that another 2.2. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I got a seconder on that, Councillor. Yes, Councillor Norman, you take on board the amendment.
Yes, do you want to read?
No, that's fine, because I'll do the amendment first.
Right, yes.
Okay, we had a seconder. So can I have a vote, please, on the amendment? Oh, sorry, Councillor Pratt, did you wish to speak? I'll take an issue again.
Yeah, just, very,
Oh, it's just
sorry, Paul Crowd, 327, area 19. The question, well, I was going to ask a simple question, and now Frank said that, it's now going to sound like a political shotgun, and it isn't. It genuinely is a straight question. 13.5 million is this, of what we got in the pot. What percentage of that, or roughly, chuck a dart at a dart or whatever, is statutory services, and then what is non-discretionary or whatever?
I haven't got that breakdown with me. I can provide.
Dart at the dart. 10%, 20%, 30%,
Not very
70%.
good at darts, so I'll have to. We have broken it down because we have got a breakdown between mandatory and discretionary.
Yes.
But even within mandatory, there are discretionary parts of those services. So it's quite hard to get a narrative. But we have estimated it before. I'll get that breakdown and I'll make sure that's sent out to members.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, no, there's only one vote. Anyone else wish to speak? I'll take to Miss anyone.
I just want to make a point that has been said, because we did mention the bus station, and as members know, toilets are discretionary services. But I take umbrage when we've got an MP who is the government, part of the government, and should have access to ministers, and we are being levelled down by not receiving level enough money. So we can continue the very same thing that she proposes to campaign on, such as public toilets, and which is a discretionary service. And I don't want to get too political, but I will do now. Paul said that in respect of, yes, it's a discretionary service that the MP is campaigning on, but it's her government that is not funding us to supply and do those services. So either way you look at it, the local government finance settlement is not giving us equal funding as in urban areas, and you only have to look at the rural services network, which stipulates the amount of money. So yes, I mean, I support the amendment. I personally support the amendment, but we don't want to get too political about it, but we've had to, because at the end of the day, it is this government who are not funding these services, and the counties, they say, are having to stop some of the discretionary services there, and we'll hear that county in February about some of the discretionary services that people rely on, such as the link centres and others, that are being remoulded into different services, and therefore it is quite a lot of funding coming here in North Devon when actually we should be levelling up, because I do get frustrated at times when I see services and some of those voluntary organisations that work really hard and absolutely subsidising what actually we should be funding statutory to comply with regulations. So I think well said to Frank for bringing that
up.
Just very briefly, I'd just like to say it's remarkable what our Director of Resources and his team has achieved over the last, I don't know how many numbers of years. And we owe a great thanks to him and his department for all they've managed to do, despite the fact that we've been getting, in real terms, a lot less money. And we would be in a really difficult position as a council if it wasn't for that department, and not just that department, because in fact it's a corporate thing that everyone in our council, we ought to be extremely proud of all our officers and all the work they do to manage what we've been able to manage with such a restricted budget. So yes, I quite agree with what Councillor Wiedemann has said. It is important that we continue to lobby to try and get the resources that we really need in our area. I mean, why should we be getting 4.7% and the county getting 6 points, whatever it is? We should be getting at least the same because we have to provide lots of services in a rural area. And therefore, you know, I just really wanted to express my thanks really to the Director of Resources because of the tremendous job that he does. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Norman, you took on board the recommendation, I believe.
Yes.
Do I have a seconder to that, please? Thank you. All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. Right. Item B, Annual Governance Statement 2022-23, pages 129 to 176. Adam, I need to say Councillor Adam. Sorry, Adam.
Thank you, Chair. The Annual Governance Statement for 22-23 formally records and publishes the arrangements we had in place to ensure that our functions were carried out effectively based on the core principles of the governance framework. This gives that reassurance that our decisions are lawful, public money is safeguarded, and resources are used to their best potential. Our framework includes the work of the Strategy and Resources Committee and full council in setting the budget, strategies and corporate objectives, work of Governance Committee on risk management and reviewing audit reports, alongside the senior management team and the corporate risk group. Internal audit, Devon Audit Partnership carried out 16 audits during 22-23, and their overall assessment was that we had generally sound systems of governance, risk management and control in place. The external auditors, Grant Thornton, have recently completed their value for money review and again concluded that we have proper arrangements to secure economic, efficient and effective use of our resources. In connection to their governance review, they made no recommendations for improvement. However, there are some areas we identified for improvement, such as finalising our community engagement strategy, updating the procurement strategy and improving our information governance. The full assessment of our governance arrangements can be found in Appendix B on your agenda. The draft annual governance statement was agreed by the Governance Committee back on the 13th of June 23, as minuted in your agenda, and it now requires full council approval as set out in the recommendation.
Thank you. Any questions?
Councillor
So, Councillor Roux.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you. You didn't want to speak, you just wanted to speak. Okay. So who was the one who moved that, please? Thank you, Councillor Bushell. Councillor Roux seconded it. All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item C, letter of representation on behalf of the council, pages 177 to 182. John Triggs to report again.
Thank you, Chair. Members, so having approved the statement of accounts and having received the annual governance statements, as I alluded to earlier, the external audit has almost concluded. The final piece of the jigsaw is for a formal letter from this council to go back to the auditors, setting out that the authority has complied with its responsibilities in the production of those financial statements. So the letter that's in your agenda pack, starting on page 177, sets out those responsibilities. It's a standard letter that is sent every year. The only addition this year is on the second page at the bottom that talks about possible litigation and liability in relation to equal pay claims. This has become a subject matter in the last financial year with some councils, most notably Birmingham. Therefore, the auditors are looking at this quite closely in terms of financial statements. So within the letter of representation we send back, we have set out that we have undertaken work and analysed the breakdown in our pay bands between male and female splits. Having carried out that work and also the gender pay reports that we publish by statute, we have proposed that there's no further work proposed by the authority. We're also not aware, either currently or historically, of any unauthorised patterns of work within the authority. We have an established job evaluation scheme that's set out in section C of the letter that scores posts by the post, not the individuals that carry out those works. And finally, no equal pay claims have been submitted to the council. So that concluded that we were satisfied that there was no further work to be done in that area. The remainder of the letter is standard, but needs to come to this council for final approval as the final piece of the audit work. If members are minded to approve the letter that's signed by myself and the chair of the council, that letter goes back to the auditors, and then that enables them to issue their final opinion that then signs the accounts off. And then this authority will be one of the small number of authorities in the country that have had their 22-23 accounts then signed off. So members, that letter's in front of you for your perusal, and obviously it's been through Governance Committee. Governance Committee have approved it to come here this evening at full council, and therefore to seek a move to the recommendation that the letter of representation on behalf of the council be approved and signed by the Chief Financial Officer and the Chairman of the Council. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions? Maybe could have a mover, please. Thank you. Seconder? Thank you. All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you. Please don't move. Item 13, council tax base 2024-25. John, report.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So item 13, this is the setting of the council tax base. It's not the formal setting of the amount of council tax. That will come next month when you receive the budget report and the formal council tax resolution. Once we've received all of the precepts from towns and parish councils and the major preceptors. This is setting the average number of properties that we will then use as part of that council tax calculation. So it's something that we produce every year. It comes to your full council in January, and that is set out in Appendix A of your report on page 185. It takes the number of properties for each year, and it's a calculation that looks at all of the new builds that are taking place and that are being monitored, and it establishes how many of those new build properties will come into the council tax base over the next financial year. It also makes a number of other adjustments for exemptions, single occupancy discounts, and also takes into account council tax reduction, which previously was called council tax benefits. That then produces an overall council tax average Band D tax base, and that's set out in your appendix on page 185. It is an increase in the number of properties from the previous year, and that has gone up by around 350 average Band D properties, which is in line with what we were expecting. It also sets out the collection rate in terms of what we budget for collecting the council tax. Obviously, our anticipation is to try and collect all 100%, but it's prudent to assume a certain level of collection rate because there will be some level of collection that doesn't materialise. That was previously set at 97%, based on collection rates that we were seeing through the pandemic in later years, where we were collecting somewhere between 96 and 97%. Pleased that the collection rate did increase in 22-23 to 97.24%, and therefore we are confident to maintain the collection rate that we estimate at 97.5% in the budget papers for this financial year coming forward, 24-25. So, Chair, the report is set out in front of you on page 183. It's the recommendations that the report be approved for the council tax base for 24-25, and that in accordance with the local authorities regulations, the amount calculated by North Devon Council as it's scheduled to 24-25 shall be shown on the attached schedule as shown in your Appendix A.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, can I have a mover, please? Thank you. Seconder? All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you. Item 14, polling district and case review 2023. Adam, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Previously, full council approved to undertake the statutory review of polling districts and places within North Devon. This consultation has now taken place, and the proposed arrangements have been set out in Appendix A on page 191 of your agenda. There are a few updates just to make members aware of. Ebrington Arms at Knoll. Whilst there has been some uncertainty over the ownership of this facility, current communications is indicating that it would be available again for the use of a polling station, and that would be our preference. The best alternative would be the Church Hall at Christ Church in Braunton, although this would be outside the polling district of Knoll. We'll continue to keep this situation under review. South Moulton has been split into 2 polling districts, 1 and 2. St John's Community Centre, again, concerns over the current availability as a polling station due to concerns with the roof. We are liaising with Boswell Town Council to monitor the situation. We're also aware of a similar situation with the roofs at Tomlin Hall and Bickington. The Governance Committee have agreed the outcomes of this review on the 19th of January and have recommended its approval to full council as set out in the recommendation 2.1.
Any questions? Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much, Chair.
No, it's okay.
That's right. I've noticed recently, of course, it's been very sad, but the mobile library service, and this is a point, has been discontinued, and I know that was a valuable resource. Those trucks must be sitting somewhere empty. We do have, and I know the Ebrington Arms is the one that you mentioned, which is in Knoll. During the recent referendum on the Bournemouth neighbourhood plan, we noted that far fewer people in Knoll voted on that compared with from other parts of Bournemouth, where they could simply get to the polling station. People in Knoll had to come into Bournemouth to vote. Although obviously far fewer people voted for a referendum on something like that, it is notable that people in Knoll were much fewer. Would it be possible to approach the county council, find out what they've done with these trucks, and perhaps borrow one, because there will always be an emergency need for a polling station, and these things seem to be suitable for that sort of use. If they could be simply refurbished and stuck up at Brinsworthy somewhere, that may be the most contentious part.
Yeah, same inquiries.
Maybe get all for it.
Sensible suggestion. Thank you. Okay. Can I have a mover, please? Seconder.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seconder, please.
Go on then.
Thank you. All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Okay. Item 15. Proposed committee timetable 2024-25. Yeah, it's over to you.
Thank you, members. So this is an annual report which is presented to council, which sets out the proposed committee timetable and council timetable 24-25, and this is detailed in Appendix A of your report. The schedule and principles are outlined in paragraph 4.2 of the report, and these principles are the same as the current year we're in at the moment, with the exception of the planning committee, at the request of some members of the planning committee, to move forward the date from the second Wednesday of the month to the first Wednesday of the month where possible. And this has been supported by the majority of the planning committee. The chairs and vice chairs of all committees have also been consulted on the proposed timetable. Therefore, it is recommended that the timetable of council and committee meetings as detailed in Appendix A of the report for 2024-25 be adopted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, can I have a mover then, please? Thank you. Seconder? Thank you. All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 16, update to Part 4 of the Constitution, pages 225 to 276, and signing. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. So, firstly, a quick apology because there might be a bit of confusion, but because we've we've got the main report plus there's a supplemental report which replaces it, and in that report it refers to appendices 1, 2, 3, and 4. But actually, the system has called them A, B, and then it's considered the supplemental report to be C, and then D and E. So appendices 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 are actually appendices A, B, D, and E, if that makes sense. The other apology to make is that the idea was that track changes would appear on appendices B and E, but the system accepted them when it went through. So you've ended up with sort of duplications rather than the kind of helpful sort of showing of what's changed. But I can run through what's changed anyway. So hopefully that'll make it clear. So the report recommends two distinct changes to the Constitution. The first is to the contract procedure rules in Part 4 of the Constitution. This is part of rationalising the Council's procurement rules following the departure of our procurement officer at the end of December and ahead of likely joint working with another local authority on procurement to fill this gap. So the changes are to amend the financial thresholds so that the Council must seek at least 3 quotes before awarding a contract with a value over 12,000, including VAT, which was formerly 5,000 excluding VAT, and must run open tendering before awarding a contract with a value over 120,000, including VAT, which was formerly 75,000 excluding VAT. There's a requirement to ensure best value has been added in. The obligation to run quotes via the Council's online procurement portal has been removed to reduce workload on staff involved with procurement. The provision has been added to allow quality aspects to be considered on a like-for-like basis as well as price when considering quotes. And typographical errors and new defined terms have been added in and corrected. So that's the first part. So that relates to Appendix A and B. And so for D and E, this is the second recommendation, and so this relates to the delegated powers of the head of planning, housing and health in Annex 2 to Part 3 of the Constitution. More specifically, it relates to paragraph 5.25 within that annex. So the head of planning, housing and health has general powers to decide applications made under the Planning Act, subject to exclusions specified in paragraph 5.25 A to C. These exclusions include at paragraph 5.25 A3 applications submitted by the council and those which relate to council-owned land or land occupied by the council. It is entirely appropriate that planning committee should decide on planning applications made by the council or relating to council land. However, it has been noted that the drafting of the Constitution is such that exclusions on officers' delegated powers in planning has been preventing progress due to the most minor procedural and administrative adjustments, such as non-material change applications or discharge of condition applications, necessitating an application having to await consideration by the planning committee. The primary intention of this exclusion being in place in terms of officers' delegated decisions is to ensure that the council is treated with the same transparency and impartiality as private developers. However, it is felt that the inadvertent inclusion of minor procedural or administrative applications by a general reference to applications under the Planning Acts cannot have been the intention of the original drafting of these delegated powers, as it excessively encumbers progress on the council's own developments versus private developers on minor issues that do not require additional scrutiny. And so updating the drafting in line with the recommendation is, in our view, remedying an inaccuracy. On that note, that there is a slight amendment to be made to Appendix C, which forms the recommended revised wording in recommendation 2.2. to add in a further appropriate exclusion to the delegated power at 5.25A3 that was missed off. So it would read instead that it excludes applications which, in the opinion of the head of housing and health, is for outline permission, reserve permission, full permission, and the addition is listed building consent, or is for the development of land without compliance with conditions under section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, and is on the council's own land or land occupied by the council or has been submitted by the council. So it was just to add in listed building consent to that. Subject to this amendment, members are referred to the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2 of this report, which need to be slightly adjusted to account for the appendices. So it will be 2.1, the council varies the contract procedure rules in part 4 of the constitution as at appendix A to this report. And 2.2, the council varies paragraph 5.25 to part 3, annex 2 of the constitution as at appendix D to this report. Thanks.
Councillor Crabb.
Chair. Very informative quickies, really, Simon. Supplying the southwest, would that be the one that we normally use, or?
Yes.
That is, okay, that's fine.
That's our procurement portal.
Yeah, I suspect it would be. Only curious, I tossed this in. Some of the councillors here will have found themselves in the position of having applied for permission before. Obviously, the full permission. So if a councillor wanted now to make a non-material amendment to their own application, a dormer window or something, would that still have to come to the committee? And if so,
yeah. So actually, this has been being raised since we made this adjustment. So yes, I mean on review of this part, then yes, currently our officers, that are covered by this and councillors would. Yeah, it would apply. I mean, it is something that we're considering might need to be taken to governance committee for more scrutiny, and then that could be recommended back to council to adjust that potentially.
Chair, yeah, I don't think we've quite got it all completely wrapped up in this, but what we do need to do, and I've been a great advocate for district council intervening more in terms of regeneration. So in the end, we're going to be caught up with this time and time again, where, we're trying to partner with the developer, and I think Seven Presidents example, isn't it? We partner with the developer and we want to get on with it and get the works done. Yet any minor changes have to come back to the planning committee. So, let's get this bit out of the way. And I'll pick up what Paul said, because when Frank knows more about issues about applications going to planning committee, that's a long story. But I just think it is really important that we actually show that we work more like the development business if we're gonna get partners and we're gonna intervene and make things happen. So it's not a matter of not being transparent. It's a matter of because the principles of all these regeneration projects will still come to committee. These are just bits of housekeeping that I imagine in the past some planning officers have dealt with them anyway without them coming back. I wouldn't be surprised, but having said that, let's clear the air, and I think it makes absolute sense to change the constitution and allow that to happen, Chair. So I can move the recommendations as a whole, including that delegation.
Councillor Weaver.
Just a point of clarification, really. We're just voting on changes to planning applications put in by the council on its own land. We're not voting on planning applications put in by members or their partners. Is that right? So if so, then I'll have to. That's
right. Just the recommendations as read out. Yeah.
Okay,
thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Just regarding the council, would it involve the board member as well?
If it's a non-material change, for instance, I'm not sure what the normal process is.
It would just be treated like any other non-material amendment that would come through from a private individual. And I must admit, I'm not sure whether board members are involved in that or not at this stage. And same with discharge conditions, but it'd be treated exactly the same as any other application.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a recommendation, I have an mover. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, all in favour? Thank you, anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Item 17, appointments to committee 2023-24. To consider and approve changes to appointment of members to a full committee 2023-24. Strategy and Resources Committee to consider the appointment of Councillor Milton to replace Councillor Wiedemann on the Strategy and Resources Committee.
Move.
Have a seconder, please. Thank you. All in favour? Anyone against?
Frank, this is frustrating in your time.
Anyone against?
You go to the back benches.
Right, on the agenda, it's not number 19, we're going to number 18. But it's just one of those type of errors that do occur. So we're on item 18, minutes of committees. Council is recommended to note the schedule of committee minutes and approved recommendation listed below. Before we do on block, I'm going to ask John to outline an amendment to item A.
Thank you, members. Thank you, Chair. So obviously it's item 18, which is minutes of committees. One of the minutes on your agenda paper this evening is item C, which is the Strategy and Resources Committee. Sorry, Chair. And it's item C2. This is published as a supplementary document and is the minutes from last week's Strategy and Resources Committee in relation to the council tax reduction scheme, and also item B, which is the council tax discounts and premiums. The council tax discounts and premiums recommendations that are shown in your appended papers, item D, include a recommendation around members confirming their decision to introduce a premium of 100% for all dwellings which are unoccupied and substantially furnished.
Shall we?
Sorry, hang on, sorry.
No, you don't, because you've declared an interest in strategy and resources. This is just to add a further bit of narrative to that wording, but it's not in relation to those discounts. It's actually in relation to what we do with the money. Yeah.
Okay.
So recommendation B, which is the council tax discounts and premiums. There were 4 recommendations there. The second one says that members reconfirm their decision to introduce a premium of 100% for all dwellings which are unoccupied but substantially furnished. Included are second homes from the 1st of April 2025. The reason it's April 2025 is we have to give 12 months notice for introducing such a levy, and that can happen now that they've gained royal assent. But what we'd like to add to that recommendation is just some further narrative around the additional revenues that are generated from that premium. And there's a piece of work being carried out through Devon authorities to look to earmark the funding that comes in a ring fence across Devon-wide authorities to address the housing challenges that we all face. So what we would like to propose is an addition to that recommendation B that adds on the wording, and that the additional monies raised from second homes council tax premiums is ring fenced across the Devon-wide system of preceptors to address housing challenges. The Chair, it's just an amendment to that recommendation that you're receiving this evening, but obviously for members to approve that recommendation.
Can I have a mover to approve the recommendation, please? Sorry, Councillor Wilson, yes, certainly.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I applaud the ring fencing, absolutely right. But ring fencing, how big, how wide is the ring fence? Is it where the actual area of the second homes are? Is it the whole of North Devon? Is it the whole of Devon?
It's the aim is to have it ring fenced within Devon. So all of the monies that are raised are ring fenced. So obviously the council tax monies that come in, 10% comes to this authority, 75% goes to the county council, money goes to major preceptors. All of the district councils are putting a recommendation through to aim to ring fence that money within their respective areas. So what we would look to aim is that all of the preceptors ring fence that money within their budgets and accounts. So we would ring fence our element, and the aspiration is that all of the other major preceptors, including the county council, would also ring fence the element of funding that they receive.
Yeah, do I have a move for the recommendation, please? Seconder? Thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions?
Yeah, I do all the other two.
Yeah. Right, okay, can
Thank
we
you.
move to do the rest on block, please? Thank you, John. Can I have a seconder?
Yeah.
Thank you. All in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Right, I've now closed the meeting now. I think it's at 7:30.